and we are live. Buongiorno, buon pomeriggio, and buonasera to all of our fans tuning in. Really excited. We are here to talk a little Euro, certainly diving into some Lazio as well, but no better guest to talk about the Azzurri than our guest here, David Amoyal. David, excited to have you. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Well, it's great to see you guys, Steve, Shawn. I've known you guys for a while. I usually don't do a lot of other shows because I think people are sick and tired of hearing me, but the opportunity of chatting with you guys was too much to pass up. So I'm very glad to be here, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've gotten to catch up. You know, when we were talking about Euros, and Steven and I wanted to chat about this, we had to go to the podfather of the Calcio world, and David. So I'm excited. It'll be a week tomorrow. Siamo noi campioni d'Europa. How are you feeling almost a week after the victory, David?
What a ride. Look, I have to say, Super League, club football commissions, it was very easy to become pretty cynical with the sport that we all grew up loving, and, a lot of us covering it in different capacities. I have to say the past few months, were certainly rough in that sense. I felt like this Euro run really kind of reminded me why I spent so much time covering this sport. I really meant it. Even going into the final, I felt like I was personally playing with house money in the sense that I enjoyed watching this team so much, just making it to the final game and knowing that I was getting the maximum amount of time possible with this team. I really mean it. That in and of itself felt like already a huge reward, right? Especially a year after I was, like many people, cooped up at home, being able to go out and watch it among people. You're reminded why football is so much better with fans and around people. So it was a great experience. But look, the fact that they won, there's no denying that makes it all that much better. Look, the other thing that stands out to me is, a lot of, on social media, a lot of the divide of fan bases within Serie A, maybe battling each other, all being united. And we know, look, Serie A takes a lot of crap. Maybe some of it is justified. I think some of it is, plenty of it isn't. And we saw not only that Italy was the best team at the Euro start. I felt if you had to pick one league that really represented itself well, if you picked Serie A, I think you have the right answer. So I think honestly it couldn't have been better. And also to have an Italy team that played well and that beats a final against a team that was playing exactly the way Italy has been criticized for years, and how we all hear from Premier League fans, oh, Serie A, boring and defensive. Well, here's the national team representing your league with almost all players from your league. So let's be honest, had we drawn this up at the beginning of the tournament, it would have been hard to have a better fairy tale than this.
Yeah, I love the just the I don't know if it's irony, but obviously, we saw it when Cheeto went down and miraculously jumped up after that goal, and the catenaccio usage of that phrase from the English media, only to come out and play that style against us. It's certainly hard to beat an Azzurri squad at their own game that we're quite known for historically. But yeah, what about you, Steven? A week after, how's it sunk in for you?
Yeah, like at first it was kind of like the reaction that Donnarumma had, and he came out afterwards and said, "You know what? Like I didn't even realize that we had won." Which is why everyone thought he was kind of doing like the Pirlo, like when he chipped Hart and then kind of walked away, stone cold face. But it's kind of that reaction for me, because in the moment I was just like I couldn't really take it in and believe that we had actually won it. But end of the day, like coming down and beating teams like Belgium, who I personally thought was a contender. France had opted out, so I was like, Belgium is very likely to win it. Then you have England, then you have Spain. Like we've defeated all of the best that were kind of there, right? Apart from France, I'd say, and Germany maybe. Like we beat all the best teams. So kind of seeing that happen and taking that in and looking at like the youngness of the team. I know there's some veterans in there that helped us stay steady, but like the likes of Donnarumma stepping up, and you had like our midfield trio who we really haven't been able to see on the big stage, because coming into this tournament, we really didn't have a tough competitor. Like we had a big group and we won all our qualifying games, or we tried them. We were on that big streak, but looking back at it, we didn't really face one of the bigger sides and really come out and play them well and win, right? So I was kind of nervous to kind of compete against one of these big sides. So that's why when all the English fans started saying, "Oh, you know what, Italy is going to be really tested. We don't know if they're going to be tested against these teams." I understood where they're coming from, but still, the way we were playing, I honestly was like, when Italy started playing the way they did, I was like, we can go all the way. And funny enough, we had a predictor at work, and I tried to get everyone involved, and we printed off our Euro brackets. I had England, Italy in the final, and Italy winning in penalties. So I didn't believe that would be the case, and I didn't want to be one of those guys who posts on Twitter and goes, "Yeah, I told you guys all so." But seeing that actually happen and come to fruition was like, holy shit! Like I didn't believe that it could actually be the case. Like I know we spoke with Fabrizio Romano as well, and he said, you know what, like I see Italy not making it past the quarters. I think it's going to be England and France in the finals. And I said, you know what, like that's what most people are kind of banking on. But knowing England the way they are, it's coming home after one win. You never know how things go. So it was good to kind of beat them. But a week later, definitely feeling good still. Like seeing the Italian flags on the cars. Been definitely good to see.
Yeah, it's certainly undeniable. I think for me, what I take away from it is there are no questions after this. You often leave a tournament and there's a little bit of luck. Certainly, winning tournaments are hard, but I think the journey, the style, you combine it with the style of play, the results, the opponents. Certainly, beating England at home. There are no questions leaving this tournament who the rightful champions are, and that feels good. You know, I kind of likened it to Copa America, where for me, I've enjoyed Messi as most fans have, but obviously there's a divide there between Ronaldo and Messi fans. But for me, I wanted Messi's tournament win to be one of those unquestionable, undeniable. You know, had he beaten a Chile or perhaps a Peru in the finals, you're going to hear every argument why that doesn't count. And so obviously on the Copa America side, Argentina winning against a Brazil at Brazil, for me, makes it unquestionable. And similarly for Italy, we had to go up against such massive teams on this journey, which was really special. I know. So Steven, you talked about some of your pre-tournament predictions. David, what were your thoughts pre-tournament? Did you think this was going to happen?
So, very honestly, I'm not a huge expert on the other national teams. I follow Serie A religiously, not too much the rest. So I can't say that I was like a great person to, rank where Italy was. But I have to say, I felt really good about this Italy team, the way Mancini had it set up. Look, the one reservation there was how is Italy going to fare against a top team? Because you can only face the teams obviously on the schedule, fair or unfair. I would say until they faced Belgium, we really didn't know how it was going to turn out. And I felt they answered it very well. I have to say, with my limited knowledge going in, I still felt that, you know what? I look at the landscape. The only team that clearly looks better to me is France. I thought, uh, they had a chance to, maybe be on their way to matching the great Spain team from the beginning of this millennium. Obviously, England having a lot of games at home, and they do have a lot of talent. It's undeniable. But I felt this Italy had a great chance. I felt, look, anything short of a semifinal for me would have been a disappointment. So, but, it really did feel like Mancini had built something special. One of the other things that stood out to me is, unlike a lot of this Italy teams we had seen in recent years, with throughout my lifetime, really, with blocks of players from teams. I grew up in the 90s. It started more with Inter. Then you had Sacchi's Milan. Then we had the Juve run for a while. This team was really a collection of a lot of different clubs. So, we've also been taught the last thing that stood out to me about going into the tournament is, Serie A was still called the boring defensive league, but you looked at the amount of goals scored every weekend, it was far from it. And I felt like this Italy team really had that, because I think, if you pick two teams in Serie A that recently kind of inspired this Italy team, you definitely had a lot of Sarri's Napoli there, undeniably, especially when Spinazzola was there. I thought you really had a lot of flashbacks to that. And the other one really is De Zerbi at Sassuolo. I don't think it's a coincidence that we had a few of their players, especially at the beginning of the tournament, Locatelli and Berardi, were important. So I think it was also great that this Italy team was inspired by arguably two of the most interesting and offensive teams that we've seen in Serie A recently.
Yeah. Well, Steven, what did you take away the most from this squad? Looking obviously now rear view mirror, a little bit of hindsight, but what did you take from this squad?
You say David or Steven? Sorry, cut out there.
Steven.
I mean, taking out of it, I think just the resilience, honestly. Like coming into this, like I said, there was a lot of few question marks about who we were going to be facing. And the substitutions that Mancini were making, I know me and Shawn had discussed this, but like Immobile coming off before the 60th minute mark, it didn't matter. He didn't have a goal or an assist, but like the substitutions that he was making, it didn't feel right. And I had a lot of friends asking me, like, what's going on? Like, why are they taking these players off at these certain times? And like, it's kind of like we were watching Inzaghi in that sense, because we had discussed this so many times where we were watching games and the in-game management for Lazio had been not poor, but it's not what people had expected. But ultimately, it ended up working out for us, and that was kind of the same thing that Mancini had said, and it was because they were playing as one team. They were all acting as a family, right? So being resilient and coming through it together was definitely probably the biggest thing to me that the Italy squad had this year.
Yeah, and as cliche as it is, I think that seems to be the resounding sentiment from most Azzurri fans, was the closeness, the unity, the bond between players. Obviously, all the credit goes to Mancini because he's the one that ultimately sets the tone, creates the culture. There are so many players on this team. Obviously, it was a team, it was a unit. But if you had to pinpoint, and I don't want to necessarily say player of the tournament or player of the team, but David, which player does Italy not win this tournament without?
If I had to pick just one, it would be Jorginho. I feel like Italy's midfield, I mean, this is, Jorginho, Locatelli started really strong. I thought Verratti, as the tournament went on, really picked it up. Was really, really a vital player. But if I had to pick one, it would be Jorginho. Look, I just don't think it's a coincidence. There's a guy that was a starter on the Champions League and the Euro winner. I think, if he buries that penalty to win the Euro, I really think right now we're hearing a ton of talk of him winning the Ballon d'Or. Fair or unfair, but that's just how narratives work. But I think beyond that, you look at the impact he had also defensively. I'm not huge on all the statistics, but there's plenty of statistics out there on how many balls he won back, how key he was. I thought, the game against Spain, you look at that first half, was really rough for Italy. It all flipped in the second. And I think as Jorginho was going, so was Italy. I mean, there's quite a few that deserve a shout out. Maybe if Spinazzola stays healthy, he's the clear choice. Jorginho, and then Donnarumma, of course, is the other. I just think, going into the penalties, I've been following the Azzurri for a long time. I've had Buffon, I remember Walter Zenga, but you never felt as confident as with Donnarumma going in a penalty shootout. So I'll say in the 90 minutes and 120 minutes of matches, Jorginho, penalty shootouts without a doubt, Gigio.
Yeah, I would echo that sentiment exactly. I've never. I texted my Dia. I texted a ton of friends that were asking me, like, how do you feel? And there's just so few moments in my sports life with any squad that I've been in a scenario where it comes down to the end, and especially for something as nerve-wracking as penalties. We all know what penalties feels like, but I've never felt this sense of calm. You still kind of dread it, but I was like, we've got Donnarumma. And it's so, again, it's penalties. And everybody says, well, it's a 50-50, right? You get the penalties, it's a 50-50. And it's not. It's not when you have Donnarumma on your side. And so I think breaking it up in that way where it's like, look, if 120 minutes, I'd say it's Jorginho as well because we played some matches without Chiellini, and Acerbi did a great job filling in. We played
did. I agree.
Yeah, and we played without Verratti, and Locatelli shined. And I think Verratti, probably technically in overall package going into this tournament, I thought he was our most talented complete player. But Locatelli, absolutely wonderfully. in place of him. And then Jorginho was really that glue piece, that one guy that allowed us to play the style that we had to play. And I'm not sure that we have anybody that could have filled in so masterfully. But yeah, going into extra time penalties, it's a Donnarumma gives you that extra confidence, which obviously bleeds into the rest of the squad to know that that you can make a mistake. And we've missed the first penalty, and we've missed penalties in this tournament, and to do so and still win them, it just, to me, it shows the confidence that we had in our keeper. So what about you, Steven? One player that you feel like we would not have won without?
I think, once again, I'm echoing you guys here. I think David kind of hit the nail on the hammer, or hammer on the nail there. What he said with Jorginho, and then obviously with Donnarumma. I was looking at maybe doing a combo package between our back line, like, the spaghetti picture we just saw with Bonucci and Chiellini. Those who eat together win together, right? So I think, like you said, though, if we take any players out, like you had mentioned, Chiellini went out, Acerbi filled in, did well. Same thing with the midfield. Verratti wasn't there, but then he came back and kind of filled in for him. So, like Donnarumma, I think if we had another goalie in net, would he have saved all those penalty shots and got us to the final? If someone else was in there, I don't know. Look at Sirigu or Meret. I don't know if they would have made those saves. So Donnarumma was definitely probably my top pick. Obviously, he won the player of the tournament as well. So definitely shows how key he was and how vital he was for getting Italy to the final. And then as well as Jorginho, right? Like, who would have replaced him if he was absent? Maybe Locatelli would have slotted in there. Maybe Cristante. Would they have had as big of an impact? I don't think so either. So I think those two players were definitely key and vital for us.
Yeah, El Tro on Twitter with a great shout on just a statistic, but Donnarumma is 5 for 5 on penalty shootouts won in his career. Absolutely tremendous for both club and country. So we know what he can do. So, obviously, Steven and I, big Lazio guys, we ride and die for our man, Ciro Immobile. We know he is divisive when it comes to the Azzurri. It's certainly a topic I want to chat, get your opinion on, David, because you're certainly one of the most level-headed folks out there. What was your assessment of his tournament overall?
So I thought he got off to a good start, which is undeniable. I thought the first few games were good. I remember he had a great shot where he hit the post. I wonder if that goes in, that changes his tournament.
Goal of the tournament, potentially, if that goes in.
Yeah, without a doubt. So I thought he got off to a really good start. I think after that, as I saw some people saying that Italy won it despite him, that's way too harsh, without a doubt. Could you also say he's the most logical position if you want to improve the Azzurri in the future? Maybe. I think that's fair, but I wouldn't say they won it despite him in the last few matches. Look, the way Italy plays is very different than the system he's used to at Lazio. I think almost more so than almost anyone in the squad. There's a change there. Like Lazio was worked more on the counter. A lot of that was really built with that. This Italy tried to play differently. So look, the other thing that I'll say about Ciro is, like, look, in the age of Twitter, there's always going to be a desire to nitpick and look at the worst thing, even at a time when Italy's doing this well. This is just how the platform designed. Outrage is the currency. They try to keep it in front of you. And even when things are going well, they know that there's more engagement with these sorts of things. So I think we also have to look at it in perspective. Look, I've been following the Azzurri for a long time. This isn't the first time that, maybe their central striker doesn't have a great tournament, but they still go far or win it. So I kind of see it that way. So I think that it was a little bit too harsh what was said about him. But I also do think it's fair if you look at the team and you're like, that's one spot where maybe we can improve. But as Lazio fans, as you said earlier, I think Acerbi, very underrated what he did, because I don't know if Italy gets past Austria without him. So.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that people tend to forget things that happen in the early rounds, and that all matters, because you don't have a final without getting out of the group stage, right? Like, it's not as if this is a 30-game season where you can write off what happens early off. I mean, we're playing a few weeks. And so for me, certainly disappointing to hear. And for me, what makes it more disappointing is you've got Azzurri fans clamoring about the unity of this squad. And you see how this team has really brought everybody together. And for 3 weeks, the Calcio community, is not at each other's necks, except for one guy. And for me,
fair.
It's just so disappointing when we are all praising the unity of this team and us as fans can't do the same. And look, we're making the guys' life harder. Like, pressure is a real thing, right? So when your own fans are coming at you, it makes it that much harder to perform. And so we're not doing him any service. But look, he played really well in those early opening games, and that matters. And we've won tournaments. So going back, obviously pre-social media age, but 2006, Luca Toni, 2 goals all tournament. Right? How do we remember him? We remember him pretty fondly during that tournament. And so, we win this one, and Ciro comes out of the tournament. When you look at the stats alone, 2 goals, 2 assists, most goal contributions on this team. And you would think the guy was just not a Golden Boot winner. And so for us, like, it's so hard. And I go back to we all praise Mancini, right? Like, there's masterclass. We praise him. What a genius. All these great things. Like, well, if you're going to do that, you have to believe and trust that he's seeing something, because he continues to start Ciro Immobile. So he's obviously doing something right, at the end of the day.
And let's be honest, when Belotti played, it was worse almost every time. I thought, look, we don't want to harp on bad things, but it's not. Yep. And let's be honest, it's not that there was a great alternative anyways. Yep. So I think what you said is very fair.
Yeah, and so what do you make, David? Obviously, transitioning now into, I think there's no better transition, because you said it. Like, Azzurri play in a different system than Ciro is used to. Well, now on Lazio, we've got a new manager in Sarri. How does that new manager affect Ciro, both for his time at Lazio and potentially the way he plays with the national team? How do you see it affecting Ciro moving forward?
Well, look, if you want to look at it in the vacuum, is this going to help his tenure on the Azzurri? I would certainly say yes, because I think Lazio is going to transition into a style that is much more similar to what we saw with Italy. So it's going to be interesting to see, now that he gets more reps and he's going to be in the training sessions with this system all the time, as opposed to, the 3-4 times a year with international breaks, how that impacts him. So I think it should be pretty exciting. Look, look at Ronaldo had an amazing season under Sarri. It doesn't sound like they had a good relationship at all, but worked out there. And look, Sarri, in a lot of ways, I've been thinking, what is better, this Italy team or Sarri's Napoli with 91 points? And then I harp on the difference between Higuain and Immobile, right? But then Sarri did really well with Merns too, which is a very different type player. So maybe Immobile works a little bit more in that sense. So I'm to be honest, I think Lazio is one of the most intriguing teams going into the season. And I think Immobile, in general, we're thinking of Lazio, adapting, moving away from 3 at the back, being more attacking. But now that you mention it, it's just very interesting to see too how Immobile is gonna improve. I think he's certainly gonna get more chances, but it's gonna be different. It's gonna be maybe different types of chances that he was getting before. So this is actually the way you put it makes me think this is a very intriguing season for him, without a doubt.
Yeah, I think it's going to tell a lot whether or not he's Italy's striker going into the World Cup. Obviously, there's plenty of time for him to get accustomed to the system. Certainly, if he puts up the goal numbers that he's been putting up in a similar system, that Mancini plans on using, it's all dependent on what everybody else does, whether it's a Moise Kean steps up. I think we've seen enough from Belotti at this point. You'll have the likes of Zaniolo if Mancini wants to get crazy with some of those formations, playing a false 9. We've seen him do that. So it'll be really interesting. I do think that Cheetah has that opportunity to still be that striker, but it's going to be certainly dependent on what happens with Sarri. What are your thoughts? Let's start with you, Steven. We've had some signings on the Lazio side. Certainly some familiar faces we've seen and loved. Felipe Anderson coming to Lazio. What do you think?
Yeah, I was trying to break this one down and kind of get a grasp of it. Like, obviously, we had fond memories of Felipe Anderson. We see a lot of the fans are very happy and excited about the signing. I'm excited about him returning and seeing what he's going to be able to offer. He's had a few off years, so maybe hopefully under Sarri and under Lazio in a place where he calls a second home, he's able to revive himself. But Lazio doesn't bring back players for a second run. Like in recent times, at least from what I've been following, I don't see it happen too much. And we tried it out last season with Hoed, and obviously mixed responses, but it ended up with him leaving. He didn't work out too well, right? So I'm hoping that it's not a comparison between the two of them, but this with returning Lazio players, it doesn't matter if they call it their second home. They really need to make an impact and make a difference. So under Sarri, him approving the transfer, him maybe not approving the transfer, whatever the case may be, he's a winger for this formation. He can really excel and thrive. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think right now we don't have a right winger as it stands, unless we're playing Felipe Anderson on that side. We don't have the inverted winger that maybe Sarri will want to use. So like we've been linked to the likes of Orsolini, for example, left-footed winger. If it's going to be Sarabia coming in, who knows who it's going to be. But like I think this season will really, and the success that Felipe Anderson and Ciro Immobile have is going to depend on what the trident is looking like. So we have obviously Immobile up front. We're going to have the depth in Murici and Caicedo, and maybe Raul Moro starts on the left-hand side too. Sorry?
I said the depth.
Yeah, the depth, right? So we have all these attackers, but it's going to be interesting to see what he does if we alternate between the 4-3-3 like he says, but we're also going to change it maybe to a 4-3-1-2. Like who knows what we're going to do? But seeing him come back, like I remember him being like his main issue was his inconsistency. So we went and got Correa, and Correa's main issue has been his inconsistency, right? So it kind of seems like we're flip flopping between the two, and obviously Correa has been good for Lazio. There's no doubt. Like he's been the second leading scorer for the past few seasons. Like we've seen what he's been able to do, but he has those off and dry spells, right? So seeing Felipe Anderson not play as much and kind of struggle over recent seasons, is that going to be another replication? We're just kind of replacing Correa to gain funds and then sign Felipe Anderson on a cheap transfer and go forward, right? So it's interesting to see what's going to happen, and I think a lot still has to develop. I think we still have a few signings in store, but who knows? We still got a few weeks, few months left, or until the end of September, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and current rumors seem to suggest that the Sarabia is getting closer with that swap for Correa and some cash. So we'll see. But David, obviously you're familiar with Felipe. Thoughts on a return, and what do you think, just as we get close to wrapping up here, of with some of these rumors as they become a little bit more concrete? Obviously Felipe is official. How's this Lazio squad looking to you going into the season? Obviously, very, very way too early prediction talk, but thoughts?
Well, first of all, with Felipe Anderson, aside from he fits in the team, I mean, financially, this is just incredible. I think we need to, there's Bosman deals. I think we need to come up for a term when you sell a player to the Premier League for a huge fee and then you get him back at a fraction of the cost like that. To pull that off, listen, say what you will about Lotito, but to sell a player over 35 million, then you get him back and all you're giving up is the last 3 million that you're owed, and you're like, yeah, we'll give you the resale. I mean, I tip my cap to that as someone who covers the financial side of transfers. This is something I used to talk about years ago with a friend of mine when the Premier League started buying up all players from Serie A. This was like 6-7 years ago. And I was like, man, this is depressing. But then my friend was a guy who knew something and goes, well, just wait and see. Watch how many of these players come back to Serie A year or two later for hardly any money. And this isn't the first time. This is the first time where maybe he goes back to the same team. It's quite the clean way. So I tip my cap to Lotito. This is a pretty unbelievable deal. Look, Sarri wanted Felipe Anderson at Napoli. We know how good Felipe Anderson was at Lazio. Was so good that he fetched a huge fee to go abroad. Is he the same player as he was back then? We don't know, but this to me is as good a chance for him to get his career back on track. Like, put it this way, if you're Felipe Anderson, you're going back to a place that a place where you're comfortable, where you've had your best seasons. You go into a manager that wanted you in the past, and a manager that, you know, you look at wingers under him at Napoli, if it's anywhere close to Callejon, Insigne, what we saw there, great. So to me, Felipe, to me, this is the definition of a low risk, high reward move for Lazio. And again, good move for Felipe Anderson. So I like it. And I do think it gives them the flexibility to, you know, look at sell Correa if they do from a position of strength, right? Because you kind of have someone fit in. I'm curious to see how Lazzari fits into this. It wouldn't shock me if we see Lazzari playing further up front. So look, I thought this was, again, I tip my cap financial move, and I think there could be some real benefits here.
Yeah, I'm excited about the Lazzari news. Steven and I spoke about this with the appointment of Sarri pretty immediately. We discussed, you know, what players do we think are going to be positively impacted, which ones may find themselves out of the squad. And there was kind of a split with Lazzari, a lot of folks not believing he could play in a four-man system. I'm pretty bullish on thinking he could be successful in that. And I'm excited to see him getting a chance because he's going to be getting that opportunity. It looks that way, at least as of now. So I think he can do well, knowing, obviously he's a player that gives a ton of effort. He's as quick as the rest. I mean, he may potentially, with Hakimi now out of the league, you know, be the quickest. So it'll be interesting to see how he develops. But certainly a lot of excitement. Still a lot to happen in this transfer window. It's nice to see Lazio for once getting some things done earlier in the window, having some of these guys at Aronzo to get to, you know, certainly with a new manager, even more critical. But I feel pretty good about the direction that they're heading, certainly Sarri being the first step of that. So, David, we appreciate your expertise coming on and joining us. It's been a while since we've gotten to connect. So this was fantastic. Thank you so much. If you want to give the folks that aren't plugged into you, where can they find your work?
Sure. No, right now we're doing Calcio Land a lot. You know, we do one episode on all platforms on Friday. We do one on Patreon on Tuesday. A lot of great stuff. You know, I'm lucky. I've had a lot of great guests over the years. I have a couple that come on every month. So yeah, we're going to cover transfer window, rest of the way, get ready for the season. So I really enjoyed being on. You guys do a wonderful job. So it was great catching up with you guys. I really appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Please, folks, make sure you tune in to Calcio Land, a must listen for all Serie A and really football fans around the world. Just make it known that you guys don't just cover Serie A. Obviously, that's a bulk of it, but you guys do touch on transfers going on, you know, around the football world. So thank you again. Another siamo noi, siamo noi. Siamo noi. Thank you guys. This was fun. And
take care, guys. All the best. Take care. Ciao.